This Marquee Dragon video is sponsored by Shattered Crystal, game codes and items.
My name is Brenda Brathwaite. I'm a game designer. I'm a creative director. Your brochure says, or brochure, whatever it's called, pamphlet thing, program is actually what it would be called. That says that I'm with Slide. I've recently changed companies and I'm now with Lull Apps, and I'm also a creative director, but I still make games, which is really all I've ever done. Anyway, I should warn everybody that I'm speaking slow now. I've had about 5 cups of coffee, and the 6th is right there, so we can expect things to speed up. Hopefully you've had enough coffee and you can stay up with my ridiculous New York speed. Anyway, so this talk is about leave your polygons at the door. It's about my transition from the AAA space to the social space. And I'm going to tell you, like, the different things I encountered. This is sort of a personal post-mortem of what it was like going between these two spaces. And I'm sort of still in both spaces. I mean, I have friends who work in the traditional AAA space. Regardless of how much I try not to think about making role-playing games, I still frequently think about making role-playing games. So when I went over, this is really sort of what I saw. The AAA space was a big bad boy. In the social space, it was this happy, cute little baby filled with farms and flowers, and wouldn't you like to come play in my cafe? And this is really what it felt like to me. And I was there about a week, and I sort of realized that it was kind of Satan's baby, right? That it was way different than what I thought it was. I mean, literally, it took no time at all, and I realized what was going on. And then it sort of became Satan himself, right? And as I got even further and further into it. And then I sort of realized that the AAA space kind of felt like the baby, and social felt like Satan. And it was largely because of this, right? Like, in the world of AAA game development, like, I know, okay, so I was there for 20 plus years, so trust me, I have scars to prove it. But it felt like when somebody says, like, we got to ship in 2.5 years, 2.5 years, 2.5 years, marriages end in 2.5 years, right? I can have practically 3 kids in 2.5 if I go back to back to back, right? I mean, 2.5 years is a hell of a lot of time. I do not want to have 3 kids in 2.5 years, by the way. Well, anyway, it just felt like there was so much money, so you've got 6 weeks, $250,000, and that's big. And you've got like 9 people to do it. And this felt terrifying to me, sort of, and I'll get back to the sort of. So I started thinking, like, maybe instead of calling the talk "Leave Your Polygons at the Door," I should just leave everything at the door. And so this is the full story of my transition. So I start here. Anybody know this game, please? I hope. Oh my, okay, good. Otherwise, all of you leave. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. So this is Wizardry 1. This is the game I start on. Still to this day, when I think about the absolute warm, fuzzy place, if I get sent to a deserted island, this is the game I'm bringing with me. I have level 70 characters. You can finish the game easily with level 13. But I just kept playing. I still have my original 1 scenario disc from Wizardry. I remember what the Apple II drive sounds like when it starts. And it is one of the most beautiful. Yeah, whoever did that. And it is one of the most beautiful things. I love this game, absolutely love it. I was with Surtech for 18 years. And I worked on the whole damn series, and I worked on the Jagged Alliance series, and the Realms of Arcania series too. And so for me, platform transitions are nothing. I go from this thing to the 360, and of course, the iPad comes out, and I'm now fairly obsessed with that because it feels like, well, first of all, it feels like genius. And then secondly, it feels like a place that board games can live. So I'm really excited about that. And along comes, of course, Facebook, which is why probably many of you are here listening to me. So the first game on Facebook was largely, I have more friends than you. And this was very exciting to me. Some of you in the room have more friends. Ed is a friend of mine on Facebook pretty soon. That's a personal joke, never mind. But anyway, so I have more friends. There's Brian. See yourself there. You show up somewhere. Oh, wait, where are you? I lied. You're on another slide. It was a lie. Dude, I can't help it. It's social games. I'm just being social, whatever. Anyway, so this is the first game, is how many friends do you have on Facebook? And I'm not really thinking of it as a platform until this shows up, right? And so this is Parking Wars. Parking Wars is one of the earliest Facebook games that shows up. It's by Area Code Frank Lance and company. And I remember, like, so you got to understand, I'm like, what level character are you on WoW? And I can tell you about my character on WoW. I can tell you about my experiences playing Doom. I have all but 2 achievements unlocked on Civ Rev, and I'm positive I'm willing to go head-to-head with Sid Meier to prove that one of them can't be done. I'm just positive of it. So I'm a pretty competitive gamer, and I uttered the following phrases to people I know. Unashamedly, like, I have to go park. I'll be right back. I've got to go park. This is ridiculous that I said, you're on my street, like, shit, I forgot to park, so I lost money, right? And this is ridiculous that I'm saying this, and I'm kind of even embarrassed that I'm doing this. But I start thinking, so I see Parking Wars, and I start thinking about it from a totally different perspective. Like, there's millions of players, and what does this mean? Like, I was asking myself questions like, it felt sort of like board games, like a whacked kind of board game even, and I was also perplexed by why I cared. Did anybody play Parking Wars aside from me? Some of you were probably on my street because of me. Oh, there's the smackdown. All right, so Parking Wars, yeah, I got Parking Wars. I was, you know, it's absurd. And Chris Avalone, he's like a Parker emeritus. I recently went in. You can see, in fact, here. Wait, let me go back to this. You can see Chris. Look at this. 30 million, right? Chris is out of control, clearly. And so I stopped somewhere around 1 million. Anyway, I became obsessed with this. Why is this fun? And if any of you are game designers, I consider this to be one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves. If you find yourself having fun, and it doesn't have to be through games, it can be anything. What is fun about it? What's making you come back to it? What's making you think about it, especially when you're not playing the game? These are critical questions. But it was Parking Wars that made me realize that Facebook was a platform. Right? It was as valid a platform as the Apple II, as the Xbox 360. So I started to explore said platform. So here in the wide world of AAA space, we have, of course, these consoles. And it takes roughly 5 years for a full console cycle to go through. In Facebook, this happens about every 5 minutes, right? Something's changing and the wall's moving out. In fact, I'm going to give you an example of that. So we've got the Facebook wall. This is just that general feed of garbage that passes by every day. And so the wall, like I might post some personal information on the wall that I'm going to log in. I desperately miss my espresso maker. You know, I have 10, oh wow, if you've never been to Portland, they have this thing called Barcade. There's so many quarters there that I left. What an awesome place. Metal and old arcade machines go. Anyway, and so, you know, I leave personal information up there just for random people who even care. And this is kind of what the wall felt like. You know, it was this sort of pathetic little happy screen of peacefulness, and I can tell you what I feel about my life. Anyway, so the stream starts getting polluted, right, instead of this peaceful stream. So you've got all kinds of garbage that's showing up on there that nobody really gives, you know, they don't care about, like let the sheep die, I'm now level 3, whatever. All these sort of things. And so the stream starts to become very polluted. And in our head, really, this is what we're seeing as we get what the stream is going floating by with all the garbage. And so Facebook starts to realize that people hate the stream. And so they just make the stream really small. And they keep compressing it. Now, this has happened over time. One of the latest iterations is now every single one of those, you know, Brenda's level 3. Well, that's not a good one. So-and-so wants to give you a dead duck and have you resuscitated on Evilville or whatever. And which is not a real game, but would be a funny one. Anyway, so that one, on Evilville, somebody wants to give you a dead duck. So now if all of you tell me you want to give me a dead duck, that's going to be just one feed story, even if it's to a bunch of different people, right? So they're really trying to compress the wall. And so what happens, though, if this is your primary method of getting customers, just think about it in the AAA space of, I don't know, let's go back a few years before we were primarily using the internet, right? Just imagine if somebody said, hey, guess what? GameStop is only going to carry titles that begin with the letter T. You'd be like, what the F-bomb? And it would all of a sudden change everything. Where the hell am I going to sell my game? You've literally just taken the single most important way I have to get customers. And so you could think it's similar to TRCs, TCRs, whatever, except it changes every 5 minutes. And so when you really think you've totally got it figured out, you absolutely do not, because all of these things literally change over the course of a month. It's the most live, dynamic platform I have ever worked on, if you don't count the heavily virus-ridden times of the late 90s, which changed, but in ways that I wasn't intending it to. Anyway, so all of these things make the games change. And so the stream, actually, what's fascinating about it is that people are considering leaving the stream now, like actually getting off of Facebook. And you know who they all are. Lots of companies you see, please come over to whatever.com and get off of the main Facebook site. Let's do it Facebook Connect. And maybe let's not do it Facebook Connect at all. They want control of their stream, their content, how they reach their customers, and what they do with it. And so the wall started to become, you know, something a little bit different entirely for me. And that's sort of how it worked out. Anyway, it is, as I said already, it is fluid and unpredictable. And this, though, this is, I found, inevitable, right? If you find tremendous success with one thing on Facebook, odds are it will change. It just will. Some of us have been using the same key combinations. I'll give you, for instance, so those of you who make first-person shooters, the interface for those games, how you blow things up, hasn't changed since the original one. So just imagine if somebody forced you to change that, like, we're sorry, we're taking away this key. Good luck with that. Anyway, and with each iteration, however, there has been one single winner. If we go back to the last big iteration of Facebook, Zynga was roughly equal with everybody else. And then they do a big iteration, a big change, and Zynga figured out how to ride that thing into, well, I guess I wanted to say into the ground, but it's not, it's the other way. Anyway, up to the sky, and they did incredibly well. And so who knows who will succeed the latest iteration. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the Germans. Or, hey, it's 1981 again. And in this, I'm going to bring up Parking Wars again. So I mentioned to you that this reminded me of a board game, and I found myself, saying, so I park on your street. And for me, this was new. Like, you're not thinking about, listen, I got to go get this hot new parking game, although if you thought of hot and parking, okay, let's not think about it that way. We're going to think about you with your car on a street by yourself doing nothing except collecting fines, which still could sound all kinds of wrong. Let me just move on from this metaphor. Anyway, so it provided a tremendously awesome break, playing these Facebook games from the games I was playing. And because I was largely, at the time, I was playing a lot of shooters, and some were more gray than others, but they all felt like the same game. Mostly, this is just a random smattering of games from the front page of Google if you type in first-person shooter, and they more or less all look the same. And so it was actually exciting to me. And I didn't really care about the graphics. This didn't really matter. In fact, one of the exciting things to me, my kid, Ameza, she's 9, and I love this, she has yet to say, wow, the graphics suck. She has yet to say that. She is a hardcore gamer. This summer, she has requested, this blows me away, I'm so proud, she's asked to learn how to program in C. So anyway, this is exciting. We'll be forming a game company in 2 years. Anyway, so this was a really exciting thing for me. and so it started asking me, it started asking me, let me have a cup of coffee. Hold on. There we are. I started asking myself, rather, what questions do we need to ask? And so game designers who are working in this space, this is probably one of the most important questions. What takes time and is repeatable? And what are those things? Well, you can see, some of it's Farmville, and it's Mafia Wars, and it's, it's Island. I think this is Happy Island over there. And we started asking, what can we do to get people to come, play for a little bit, and go away, and then come back, but get them on a schedule. And you can say, yeah, but this is pretty lame gameplay. But it's not really, because I know all of you, all of you have thought about some game in your head. Like right now, I have a talent point unassigned in WoW. And I've been thinking about this, and it bothers me. I know that's lame, but that's why I make a living making games, because I'm insane. But all of us think about games outside the game space. We just do. And these games actually mastered that. They trained you to think outside the game space, and that's really pretty powerful. And this is the kingpin right here, the harvest mechanic. So we basically try to find tasks, and you can harvest anything, not just plants, right? You can harvest people coming to your island. So something that takes a certain amount of time, you invest X, you wait this amount of time, and you get Y back, and then you do it again. And there's so many things that fit that model, and so game designers in this space actively look for these things. This isn't common in social games, or rather well, it is, in AAA games, but it's not the core, certainly, right? The core is like, I want you to sit in the chair, and I want your ass to become sore. I want you to stay there until you age. I want you to lose your family and friends, or not, not everybody has to go the way that I went, but whatever. Anyway, but the Germans knew this. The Germans absolutely knew this, so these games are epic games. I love this game. This game is about bean farming. And I know you're thinking, bean farming? Play it. This game is awesome. And what's great about this isn't the only German game about bean farming. I kind of love that, right? There's like 5 German board games about bean farming. And so the Germans were onto this a long time ago, and at one time, I will remind you, we knew this too. We in this industry knew this too. We had a chance to do this. What I love about social games, and I'm going to get to this way later on, but what I love about social games is that many of us, me included, went, these are stupid games. These are stupid, dumb games. And it was like, and then we get to the space, and there's all these people from the web there, like who used to build web apps, and we're like, what the hell are these people doing making games? It's because if somebody threw a party and said, we're having a party, it's going to be awesome, come, game industry. And we said, we think your games are stupid, and we don't want to come to your dumb party, right? And so then, by the time we were like, wait a minute, you're making how many millions a month? Wait, we're coming to the party. We're on our way right now. And then we get there, and we're late to the party, and people are already running, but it's okay, because we got time to catch up, trust me. Anyway, another thing I've discovered, so being an admitted WoW lover, many of the mechanics that I find in social games right now, and where I believe the future of social games are in fact going to go, you can already see in games like WoW, all of them. There's not a single mechanic that I will mention today, or have mentioned, or whatever, that is not already present in World of Warcraft. Truly, it's absolutely a genius game. And if you look at things like a beta that I'm a part of, you can see that mainstream AAA companies are absolutely, totally pushing the social angle, and it's very exciting to me. But when I say pushing social, what the hell does this mean? All right, so this is good old Mr. Rogers. Always Google Mr. Rogers with Safe Search on. Always. Always. Friend, Don't do what I did. Anyway, so although my computer may be a little bad. Anyway, whatever. So this is what I started wondering. It's like social, it's not really like, so you're my neighbor. What does that mean? It means I see your name on a dotted line, right? I don't see actually what, you know, what can we do something together? And so I start thinking, like, how could we actually play together? What would it mean, really? And again, think of WoW, right? What would it mean if millions of us could play together? What would it mean if hundreds of us could play together? What would it mean if we could actually play asynchronously, or if we could play together? And I'm not saying that Parking Wars is going to become the next WoW. It's not. There's some game space that we have yet to figure out, which makes it very exciting to me. One of the earliest things we see with players trying to get them to actually play together is what I'm calling the recruitment mechanic. So, you know, I want to take out Brian. I told you were in my talk. See, haha. I want to take out Brian. Not that I just made that up. And I need 100 of you to help me. Don't feel intimidated. It's all, Tom's behind you. You're cool. Anyway, so we get these people, whether it's to like, I need to build a barn, I need to build a house, I need, you know, I found a buried treasure and I need 20 people to dig it up. It's asynchronously social. It's still fake socialization, but maybe that real socialization is possibly coming. I mean, people are certainly thinking about how we can do synchronous play. There have been efforts at it, right? But you're not seeing it globally yet. You're not seeing it adopted by all kinds of games. And to me, it very much felt like 1981 again. I mean, crazy that I could think, like, you know what I want to make a game about? Farming. Like, seriously, imagine just saying that 10 years ago. I've just finished playing Doom. I'd like to make a farming game. About what? You're going to blow up the fucking corn? I mean, like, what? This doesn't even make any sense, right? You know, but nowadays, when you say a farming game, now you're talking, you know, and it's interesting to me. And the game space was super wide open. Like, I could consider literally making games about almost everything I wanted to. And now, mind you, many of you, when I say farming, you're thinking, yes, farm town, I mean Farmville, I mean farm whatever, I mean island farm. And it's almost, you can just pick farm chair. And you're like, farm chair, that sounds like a good game. Like, it doesn't even matter, right? And so, but I want to address this point because flattery was very present in 1981 too, right? So there's wizardry. Here's a coincidence. Hi, camera, I'm leaving. There's a coincidentally 6-character game, right? And another 6-character game. That's Bard's Tale and Might and Magic. And of course, wizardry was not at all based on Dungeons and Dragons. And so flattery is very present in the early days. We just didn't have an internet to mock it and Twitter to say all kinds of crap about it. So I'm going to talk about speed. The speed in this particular industry. I remember the very first design meeting I went to. And so bear in mind, I had not worked on a live product to this point in time. But I remember somebody saying to me, I remember saying, you know what would be awesome to do, and we could do this, and then blah, blah, blah. And, you know, do you know what the math would be? Yes, here's the math. And they said, we should have that live tonight. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is like the mythical programmer. Like, live tonight? Like, really? You're going to do it tonight? And I was just blown away that this kind of speed could happen. Because normally it's like, well, we're going to have to do that. Then we got the code review, and it'll take about a year. Right? Or more commonly, I would just get, no. We're not doing it, which is common with designers, right? And so it felt like, so this was the social space versus the AAA space, right? And so you're going to get there awesomely fast, and you'll just get there awesomely, right? And so there's lots of polish in the AAA space. And all of you, I know, are looking at the big wheel and thinking, why don't they make a big wheel for adults? Like, if they did, I'd buy it. Maybe they do, right? I mean, I loved my big wheel. Yeah. Anyway, so here we are. So you may kill yourself in the process in both cases. And at some point, I start to realize, however, that to this speed, there are significant trade-offs. Namely, we ship at alpha, or before. So here's the plan. Now, this is not my plan at all, please. This is like some things I've observed. In general in the space, and if you play any social games, you've observed them too. So like I was saying, we ship at alpha, right? And so shipping at alpha basically sometimes creates some problems, and we rely on viral channels to basically get our stuff out there so that other people can find the games. At this point in time, it sort of makes sense, like, well, why do we want to finish it? We don't know if they're going to like it. So let's just sort of ship something that vaguely resembles a core of a possible game concept cheese product, right? And where cheese product came from, we have no idea. Anyway, so the social game industry is often critiqued by the mainstream game industry who says you ship crap. That's why. Let's all just reflect on some titanic explosions that have occurred. Like, if there's not anybody, I've had a 54 game on game rankings that I'm not proud of, but 54, at least I didn't go below the dreaded 50 line. But we all ship Titanics, or we go down in flames, and we have the Hindenburg. It just happens, right? And in the social game industry, we throw stuff out there, and it's also kind of exciting, because you know, like, if you're making AAA games, you have your game tested by a ton of different people. Imagine 1 million people testing your game. Actually, that would be epic, right? Imagine 500, 100, whatever, people testing your game. But it makes you feel moderately anxious. Tom's sending me a text. What's up with that, Tom? Oh, okay. I'll make sure I announce that. Feel free to send me texts, and I'll announce them from this. I'm kidding. Please don't. All right, yeah, face down, there it goes. Okay, so anyway, yes, there it is. Thanks, Tom, and Brenda, whatever. So we see what you've done. You sent me a text when I'm on stage. Okay, so it hurts when I poop. Here we are. Is the next slide. There. All right, so somebody's going to take that out of context on YouTube, and I'm going to die. Thanks. Good night. Whatever. So we rely on metrics to find out what are players doing, what aren't they doing, are they having fun with this, where are they dropping off, and in fact, if you listen to some really great talks on other conferences have these talks online, and there's some great talks about some of the early MMO stuff when they put metrics into it and they realized when players were dropping out. And so those early metric tests were really interesting and exciting to me, and I still love them. I'm a game designer, so I like data. So we rely on the metrics to find out what they're doing. It's just a live test, but still, if you're a AAA designer, you have been trained to keep that thing behind doors until it's perfect, or until you truly know you're screwed. And at which point you release it and hope to God that your friends and family never play it, but you just hope. Anyway, so it's highly iterative. This is a real product, by the way, on Amazon. Instapoop. It really is, and I'm going to order it for the hell of it now. So anyway, sometimes, though, from this rapid iteration, this rapid live practically prototyping, sometimes great games arise, and you know what they all are. I mean, Parking Wars was a tremendous early success. Pet Society, Farmville, I mean, you know, the names, there's tons of them. And it's really exciting. And one of the things that you start to realize is sometimes these games, like the numbers that I've heard, I obviously don't have any inside information on this, but some of these social games that have made bazillions of dollars at this point, well, okay, that's a gross exaggeration, but that have made millions of dollars at this point and are, you know, choking back $100,000 a day, these things cost $250,000 to make. Like, who wouldn't like that kind of return on investment? And there's lots of AAA publishers out there who are saying, like, well, you want us to invest $25 million? And what are our odds of success? Do you know how many Farmvilles we could make for 25? We can, like, fuck up all day for $25 million. And it doesn't even matter. But let's talk about smack talk. Here it is. So your friends in the industry, and I found this out very quickly, will say, you're not making real games. Why aren't you making real games? Now, what I find really funny about that is when I say to them, so what are you doing this weekend? Well, I'm not making real games. And they're going to say, I'm watching football. So let me get this straight. You're going to actually sit and watch a game occur. So that to you is fine. You're not even actually playing. You're just sitting and watching people beat each other from one side of the field to the other while wafting a ball. And that's okay. I'm a football fan. It's all right. Or maybe it's not, maybe I'll get hit, whatever. So this, I find it fascinating that we have this issue, and it's true that people don't perceive these to be real games. But what I really, truly want to make clear, and so this is coming from a hardcore role-playing background, I love Excel. F9 is my friend. And I think it's amazing. When you actually look into the face of designing a social game and designing it well, it is one of the most complex tasks I have ever faced as a game designer. It just truly is. How can you really, like, sure, you can just copy something and bring it over, but that's not going to get you new players. How do you innovate upon that? How do you get 1 million people to play together simultaneously? Like, it's really exciting, right? And how could you really do it? And the possibilities are practically endless. And one of the things that I also find exciting is to remember that, you know, everything doesn't have to be civilization. Everything doesn't have to be diplomacy. Everything doesn't have to be The Sims, which, you know, is fairly complex compared to a lot of social games, right? I think we tend to forget what our roots are. Right? Like, how many of us, you know, played solitaire? Like, would you go like, oh, solitaire is not a real game? Or just because it looks a particular way? Like, let's take a look at chess or Go. Those are really simple-looking games, but the strategy is endlessly complex. And I'm not comparing something like click, 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 you know, get your farming taken care of to a game that has the depth of Go or chess. But what I am saying is, you know, looks can be deceiving. And I also find it interesting, one of the correlations that I've used is people don't have a problem with gardening in the real world. And they consider that a great pastime. But gardening online is somehow this, well, it's not a real game. And one of the things that's important to me is that maybe these aren't real players, right? This is a friend of mine, Julie. And Julie, for the first time in her life, she's playing games. And this is exciting. My niece, she's 36 years old, so I don't want you to think my niece like this, sent me a text saying, will you be my a text, mind you, will you be my neighbor on Farmville? So I called her and I said, are you seriously playing games? So this is somebody who's been in my life, obviously, for the whole thing. And when what do you do for a living? What is your favorite? So you make games. You do the art? No. You do the programming? No, I don't do that either. What do you do exactly? I think stuff up and other people make it. And this sounds like a pretty exciting living, and it is a total racket, I must admit. But having people like my niece actually playing games, and she was saying to me, you know the guy who made Farmville? This is to her like, you know Jesus? You know, I mean, it was just so exciting, right? And so suddenly people are like, are you making Farmville? And I remember when it used to, like, you make role-playing games. Oh, so you made Diablo. No, I didn't do that one, right? But it was really, you know, it was fascinating to me that games now, like, this whole group of gamers, these massive bazillions of people who have never before played games, these are our potential market. You know, because eventually these guys are going to want something, maybe they won't, but they may want something more complex. And when you have discussions with your family and they say, you make games for a living? No, it's, you make games for a living. And having been in the industry for nearly 30 years, I mean, we've all heard the questions like, you make games, those violent, nasty video games. What about Farmville? Oh, you hack plants down. I see it regularly. You know, I mean, so it's changing. And this is my absolute favorite one. I am the new hardcore gamer. I love that. For the first time in my career, people say, we find it very valuable that you're a woman in her 40s. That's never friggin' happened, ever. Let me tell you that. It's like, what do you know? You play games? Can you play a first-person shooter? Right? And to the point where I mean, I'm not good at first-person shooters like I used to be, but I actually got into this smackdown discussion where I challenged a guy in GameStop once to a death match because he said, what console does your son have? I thought, oh, dude, you and me. But anyway, I am the new hardcore gamer, and I know you can say, like, Farmville's not hardcore. You tell that to a hardcore Farmville player. All right, but speaking of gameplay, so everything is changing. And I really deeply believe that we are now at a turning point in social games and in games in general. If you've taken a look at well, a lot of the things that are coming out. I mean, many of us here in this room are working on games, and we're trying to figure out how we can make things more social, more than just going, I don't know, we'll give you an achievement and you can tell your friends about it. Because people inevitably do want to interact. The apple was an aberration, right? So games have always been social. We've always gathered as humans to watch games, to play games. Mammals play games, and I don't mean humans, I mean just general mammals. They play games, it's instinctive, it is part of what makes us human, it's part of what makes us breathe and alive. And so people are trying to figure out ways that people can play with their friends and get together with their friends because it's way more fun. We all know it's more fun to kill our friends online than it is to just kill an NPC AI. I'm sorry for all the violent talk, whatever. So one of the things that's exciting about it is we have all these shifting viral channels. We don't know how to get a hold, and I'm really not a fan of the word viral at all. I wish there were another word, but it's already out there, so I'm just using it. And we've got, you know, new things like Facebook credits. So are you going to have to pay for everything online with Facebook, through Facebook credits? This potentially can take a significant chunk out of revenue for people who are developing on Facebook. And I mean a significant chunk. You know, it could be 20%, it could be 30%. Who knows what it's going to be? I mean, people do know, but whatever. And I may have invented the word competition. So if you are actually working in the social space, one of the things that's terrifying, and I've heard people say this recently, is like, you know what, I think I've truly got something very innovative, and I know they're going to take it in a week. Because it used to be like you could make your game and you'd be working on it for about a year, and by the time they realized what you were doing, man, you were gone. You were so far ahead of them, they didn't even have a chance to catch up to you. But that's not always the case. Like literally, you can put something out and that thing can be gone in a week. The first time I saw the recruitment mechanic, so-and-so wants you to help some of their friends. Everybody was doing it. The first time I saw it, everybody was doing it. All the big companies were doing it on their main games within a week. Within a week. Like, that's nothing. And this, and I said this on a panel that I did at GDC with Noah Falstein and Brian Reynolds and Steve Moretsky, that to me, very much, this feels like a turn-based strategy game. Social game design is a turn-based strategy game, me versus all the other designers. And they all feel the same way. And it's awesome. I mean, because I'm a competitive person by nature, but it's also terrifying because you've literally got maybe a week, maybe less time if your mechanic doesn't take that much to get in. Like we saw neighboring, right? So suddenly, it used to be you'd go into a Facebook game, and if your friends were playing it, they're all in your list too. But not anymore. In many games, not anymore. You have to actually invite them. And there's all these really subtle changes, these very subtle things that you would notice only if you played a lot of them. For instance, we all know that the click OK button is, well, let's just say it's here. And I put up a bunch of pop-ups like, yes, please do this. Yes, please do this. Yes, please do this. And then there's one that I clearly know, like, give me permission to publish to everybody you ever know or may ever know, right? And I'm going to put the deny button where the, let me see, I'm going to put the button, I'm going to flip the buttons around to make it likely that you will click. Because you're going to say, I don't want to fucking do that, click. But I'm going to put the OK button there instead. So this is after I've gotten, not me necessarily, I would never do something evil like that and admit to it. So these things happen. You watch the patterns, and it's really subtle. It is absolutely one of the best turn-based strategy games ever, for the few of us who are playing it. And here's the alleged puzzle of social game design. So the first thing is we put our game out there in whatever state it may be, and not everybody ships in alpha, mind you. There's a lot of companies, a lot of groups that don't. They keep their game back and they polish it. But it's free testing at the same time. So they try to get acquisition, and so some people will just dump a ton of money into advertising on Facebook. One of the big things that we see, and one of the things that Zynga has been, I don't want to say accused of, one of the things they've been successful at, actually, I'm not trying to promote Zynga up here, but you can't knock 75 million players or 85, or it's probably 95 now while I've been talking. And so what they do is they basically say, wow, that game really worked. That's awesome. Let's take that game and let's make it prettier, and then let's advertise the hell out of it and get a ton of players. And so we're all doing this. Like many of us, if you've ever made a first-person shooter, if you've ever made a role-playing game, you're largely doing the same thing. It just takes you a lot longer and a lot more cash. And hopefully, you know, maybe our innovations are more exciting because we have massive hardware changes that affect us. So then we have the virals. We're trying to get the channel out. How many different ways can you let your friends know that you're playing these games? What I love, I periodically find a social game that has been released on the very, like I'm right there, the first player to get it. And I can actually see, I post that to my wall, and then I see how many other people join me in 30 minutes based on that post. How many are now there in 60 minutes based on that post. I also do certain things when I'm playing a game. I set my phone to go off in 30 seconds, and I set my phone to go off in 60 seconds. The 30 seconds lets me know, what do I think about the game? Do I understand it at this point in time? Because it's not like I went to GameStop or ordered a game off of Amazon, and I've now invested $59 for this thing, or I'm spending, like right now, I haven't played WoW. Well, since I've been on this trip, I have not played WoW, and Blizzard doesn't care. They're going to, you know, take the money out of my account no matter what. But with social games, you've got a minute. I really believe we're back at the arcades here. You've got 1 minute. If I go into your game and I don't get it, I'm gone. And to the exact extent that I need to learn that, you know, I don't necessarily, I'm here to have fun. I don't want to learn it. One of the great screens that I used, I gave a lecture on this, and I don't have the screen. I wish I would have. So I took a picture, so just imagine in your head Doom. Now put a friend ladder at the bottom of Doom. And so I showed this, and people were like, what the? I mean, literally, people were laughing inside of 3 seconds. Like, that does not even make any sense. So just imagine if you're a brand new player, and you're going, what the hell is supposed to happen in this game? Would I rather try to figure out your interface or do something I already know how to do? And so we've literally got 30 seconds for the like, and maybe it's even shorter than that, but it's 60 seconds. I always, so far, always know whether I'm going to come back to a game or not by the 60-second mark. Do I understand why I'm there? Do I understand what the core grind is? And do I understand why I need to come back? 60 seconds, that's all we got. You time your average AAA game, and at 60 seconds, you'll be lucky if you've like loaded up the, you know, second part of the cutscene that begins the game. Not that that's bad. These are just different types of games. I'm absolutely not trying to slam them. I'm very eagerly awaiting Steam on the Mac. Thank you so much. And so it's very cool. I play a lot of games, obviously. And so then once we get the players in, we want to advertise even more, to get even more players in, and we want to pump up the virals. We want them to go get other people. It's like the old Breck hair commercials, and now I'm totally dating myself. But one of the things that is starting to occur to me, if it's not occurring to a lot of people, you know, I've mentioned numerous things at this point, but there's one word I've maybe been a little light on. And when we think about what are players coming to, and if it's not good, that they're going to leave. And this reminds me, there's a restaurant I went to in Savannah, Georgia. So Savannah gets 6.6 or 6.7 million people a year that come through downtown. So they can go in and they can eat. This is not a picture of the actual restaurant, but it's in that neighborhood. So they go into this restaurant, and the food is foul, honest to God. There should be hazmats everywhere. And I went into this, and I thought, I'm never freaking coming here again. But they're still in business because 6.7 million people come off the river and go, oh my gosh, Savannah. And then they go in there, and they eat, and they have a good time, and they go, oh my God, and then they get sick, and they leave, but they don't tell people on the cruise ship as they're passing one another. So things like that are allowed to live. And it's possibly because we still, you know, on Facebook, we've got 6.7 million people coming through, and actually we got a hell of a lot more than that. And so one of the things you can think of, like, well, what if we actually wanted to improve the quality? Like, what would happen if we improve the quality? And so let's make our games better. Let's pick up retention. So if advertising isn't necessarily working and virals aren't working, and maybe we need to think about that, right, with the wall going, you know, almost away, people do things like improve the graphics. But improved graphics, I mean, we've all said, wow, that's a really pretty game that I absolutely wasted $59.99 on, or $95. So graphics isn't necessarily it. And in fact, Facebook, the platform it's on, isn't going to support really crazy graphics. I can't tell you how many people are like, you know what you need on Facebook? A 3D engine. For what? Why do we need a 3D engine? Mule is still one of the best games ever. And if you haven't played Mail, please do. And nobody needs, a 3D screaming engine for chess. And I'll remind you that, as human beings, one of our favorite activities doesn't have a 3D engine, and it happens in the dark, and your eyes are closed most of the time, right? So graphics aren't everything. Another thing is, at least for some people. And so another thing we try to do is we're like, well, you know what doesn't happen? They don't understand our game, they're leaving, so we'll explain it harder. This is, tutorial, basically death by tutorial, right? So it's, no, just explain it longer. If we give the player 75 screens, maybe then they'll understand it. No, if you feel a need to tutorialize your game to death, and I may have just made up that word too, then you failed. Because basically in a social game, remember 30 seconds, and maybe, I'm just going to say it's 10 seconds. I need to go in, I need to see it, I need to know what's going on here, I need to recognize it, and I need to have an idea what's going on. We also advertise harder. We're hoping that if we can get 2 bazillion people through the funnel, some people will stay and will grow. And that is not always the case, because eventually we're going to top out, or somebody's going to make a great game. Like, how many of you wanted to play, I'm going to go back to like 93. So 93 was a banner year for games. Myst comes out, and Doom comes out, and the ESRB says we're the second coming of Satan as a game industry. Wait, the ESRB didn't say it. Well, they eventually said it. Maybe they didn't, whatever. So this is when Congress basically says that we're horrible, and the ESRB is created. So one of the challenges of that is that I didn't hear about Myst because I saw an advertisement. I heard about Myst because a friend of mine said, oh my God, you need to play this game. I didn't hear about Doom because I saw an advertisement. I heard about Doom because my friends were like failing to show up for work, right? I worked in the game industry. It's like, what's wrong? I was fucking playing Doom, right? And like, right? And so then I did the same thing. And it was awesome. I literally still remember the day that I was in a bathrobe at 5 o'clock at night. And I missed everything that day. And then I canceled everything that night so I could stay in the bathroom and play Doom. And we also take a look at metrics and see what players are doing. This is, I think, one of our potential biggest dangers. Because we all know if we looked at the metrics for hockey, it would turn into boxing. And it's very dangerous for us to let the players totally make those design decisions, right? Because they may be doing something because we're not giving them the right tools to do what they really would like to do. So you can't just blindly follow metrics. And I believe soon we'll hear another word, and we're going to hear it loudly, and that is gameplay. I really believe that eventually players are going to want the good food, and that restaurant in Savannah will crash and burn and go down. And that players are going to want solid, good gameplay. And remember, not necessarily good gameplay that we here may think of good gameplay, but good gameplay that the 43-year-old hardcore gamer finds as good gameplay. Maybe I just want a garden on my screen for a while. I will remind you that Dan Bunton, who is one of the greatest game designers who ever lived, deceased now, she had this great line that she said to me, which was, who knew people were going to want to fly on their computers? And back when Wizardry first started, people said, Apple IIs, those are way too expensive. Those aren't for games. Those are for business software, right? Thank God nobody listened to that garbage. And so eventually, you can argue that, and people do. Yeah, but we've got so many people, we've got to focus on other things. Let's just amp the virals. Well, no, because these people, this is not an infinite supply, right? This eventually is going to slow down. People are eventually going to want super good gameplay, and it reminds me in some respects of 1983. And I was there for 1983. Some of you also were there for 1983. It was the year that things like this happened. And now, I want to point this out. I would challenge you to make this game in the amount of time that these guys had to make this game. They made this game over lunch. Not really, but it was effectively over lunch. Anyway, so this particular game, this is sort of the poster child of the crash of 1983. I was there. This is when people went, oh my God, they'll buy anything. Let's just, I don't know, put a piece of garbage in a bag and we'll hang it up on the wall and people will buy it, right? And lots of people thought this was a great idea, except there was so much garbage that people just decided, I'm not going to buy that crap. But there was one company, Lowe, that showed up with their little official seal of quality and said, we're Nintendo and we love you. And we're going to make good games. And so Nintendo really turned things around and other people followed. And even though we can look at this, I mean, if you're playing social games, literally it's overwhelming the amount of games that are coming out every day. I literally spend at least one full day a week, full day. And now mind you, every single day I try to play 10 new games from wherever. But I spend one full day a week playing nothing but new social games. That is astounding. Try that in this industry, like playing one new AAA game a day, like a whole day filled with just playing them for 10 minutes. Yeah, I got the pattern, I'm out. And so while it seems like there's this huge, like, oh yeah, everybody's copycatting, it's garbage, and I don't feel good about it. Not me. I mean, I feel fine about it, but people can look at this space and feel like it's really troubled, and eventually it's a bubble and it's going to burst. What I loved about 1983 was that in the 10 years that followed it, we literally saw the invention of every single genre. that once people went in and they went, what the hell is going on here? Let's make garbage, everybody! After that was over, we literally saw the greatest creative explosion ever in this industry, ever. And so I'm wondering, will we potentially see the same thing? And I really believe that we are there and we are potentially on that horizon. And that is it for me. Thank you. So since I talked epically fast, probably, it said that horrid thing. I can do a couple questions if anybody has a couple questions, or just one. Otherwise, you're free to go have coffee. Yes?
I come from outside of the gaming industry, but I'm always intrigued by the design process. So when you think of the game, do you ever think, this is going to be online, what do I need to do so that the game design is more efficient for the end user to receive it fast? Do you take that into account, or is it always an afterthought?
No, it's right there in the beginning. I mean, when I'm designing a game, the very first thing I do, the absolute very first thing I do with any game, it's not even a social game, it's just any game. And I think the benefit for people who are dinosaurs like me and who've been around forever is that it doesn't matter. Like, I'm so used to somebody going, sorry, VGA is no longer true. SVGA, deal with it. Apple, gone, goodbye. PC, deal with it. So the design, the core design process is always the same. And it is, I figure out what the game is going to be about, what's the core, and what are the features that support the core. Everything else has to go. So the core might be harvesting. Harvesting what? Plants. What do I need to do, and how does it all factor together? And I want to make sure, I want to steal your brain. Your brain has already done a lot of work, so I want to use as much of an existing mental model as possible. What do you already know coming into the game? To the exact extent that I or any other game designer needs to teach you how to play, I've lost some percentage of my players. So I'm always thinking through the eyes of the player. I think one of the challenges is thinking through the eyes of accounting when we're looking at virals and how many other people we can get into the game. I've never, the greatest games that were ever made, I never heard them say, we want to make $1 bazillion. And sure, I'm sure some people, well, no, okay, I'm not going to take this as an opportunity to slam somebody who deserves to be slammed. Anyway, the recent upheaval in the game industry. The challenge is, or what I hear people say, are things like, I want to make a great game. Those developers, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make an awesome friggin' game. And people, when they set out to make an awesome game, by default, I know very few games that are truly awesome games that didn't get played. And some come out, like Double Fine has made some awesome games that have not found an audience that they deserve. But maybe that'll come. There's some games that are now coming to Facebook, some games that are coming to the iPhone. Plants vs. Zombies, would that have found a great life somewhere off the iPhone? I don't know. The gaming platforms are changing so rapidly. Who's to say where the next great success is going to be? If Full Throttle were on my iPhone, I would not be speaking right now. I would be playing Full Throttle. So it's hard to say, but I always start by thinking of the player. It is the absolute number one thing we have to think about if we want to make a good game. Says I, yes.
I just wanted to point out that one of the most interesting challenges of designing a game for something like Facebook is taking the concept of having a 40-hour game that you would typically have in the AAA market, but instead of having a 40-hour game that people can finish in a week, taking a game and making it take 40 hours over an entire year. That's a whole shift, and it was one of the biggest challenges that I had in designing the game that I put out. So
yeah, so this is an interesting thing. I debated talking about this, and I guess the debate's over. One of the things that I find interesting is that, sure, I design games the same way, right? It's like we want to set up a pattern, so you show up, do some stuff, go away, I'll see you back in a bit. That's sort of the nutshell. It's the grandmother who throws you out. And then it occurred to me, like, why do I want to get rid of him? Like, and I've just started, this little demon has sort of shown up, like, well, why do I want to get rid of him? What if they wanted to stay and play the game for hours? What if they wanted to? Why should I have to get rid of him? And why is that a bad thing? And so I think, especially if we're going to start talking about games that support synchronous, simultaneous, synchronous, simultaneous, how about I say yet another word that means the same thing? But if we want synchronous play with a whole group of players, do we really want to, how would we do that? How are you going to do that otherwise? So I think there are people, we're looking at it, Facebook as a casual player audience. But I think I know we're going to see games that defy that. And I also know we're going to see games on Xbox, games on the iPhone, games on other places that are purely designed for casual players on a traditionally hardcore platform. But yeah, it is challenging. It's a whole new design thing. Like, why do you want them to go away? Because our goal, of course, if you're a AAA game designer, you're bringing people in and your goal is to get them to rivet themselves to a chair, possibly forever if necessary. And to say, like, I'm going to let you go, but you have to leave enough of, it's like the ending of Lost, right? Like, oh, I got to come back next week. And you can never wrap things up cleanly. And so always leaving them and training the player to come back and come back and come back because they want to. Yes? Designing for monetization, yes. Well, I mean, so this is part of the game of game design. When you're seeing how many people come back and what things would people be able to monetize for. What I generally do when I'm looking at that, and I'll just give it to you in a larger, in a more abstract sense, is that when people are coming in and they're doing the core loop, there's got to be a drag, right? So you need to be just slow enough that you want, that it's potentially annoying. That if I say, hey, by the way, for something slightly prettier, or not slightly prettier, that's yet another monetization thing. To go just slightly faster, you could get this. So a lot of times people will put monetization in the core loop if you want to buy your way forward in the game. Again, as I mentioned, WoW, we have the Chinese gold farming. All right, so if you want to get ahead in WoW, Chinese gold farmer, get better loot, right? Or get better gear, and other things. So you put it in the core loop. You make the core loop go just a little bit faster. Once people are into the game, of course, it becomes about, I've heard this phrase mentioned, or this term mentioned, and I love it, it becomes about peacocking, right? People are coming by your place, so I want to make sure that you see my place and you potentially have an opportunity to say, wow, your farm looks like shit. Somebody said that to me recently, and I'm sure it does again. And so you want an opportunity for showing off. And you want to give me enough stuff that I start to feel, it's tidiness theory like anything else. We go into a video game and we want to make it ordered and clean and feel normal. And that applies in first-person shooters as well as it does in role-playing games. So we want to make sure we want to solve it, we want to clean it, we want to make sure we cover the whole level, that we've got that whole area done. In social games, we give you a ton of stuff in return for that. So I remember, and I'll use Farmville again as an example, Farmville was the first one that loaded me up on stuff. So I've got like a zillion trees, and my farm looks like a garbage pit. I mean, there's just stuff everywhere, right? And so it was the first time, and I'm not a person who, I'm a game designer, right? So this makes me, challenged in many ways. But I'm not a person who feels like, oh, I need to have my trees all neat and nice and my farm pretty and decorated, but I've got so much crap that I feel the need to like organize it in some way. And now that I've started to organize it, very subtle, come on in, kid, the first hit is free. I start thinking like, well, at my farm, I want my farm to look better than his farm. So this sort of stuff, people end up buying things to look a little bit better, to look a little more impressive to their friends. And again, to go back to WoW, we've all experienced this. If you played WoW, you go in and you go, where the hell did you get that blade? Or something, right? And by the time you're level 80, you're basically one walking sparkle effect, right? And so it's that peacocking reflex. We want to see and be seen in games, just like we want to see and be seen in real life. And so putting monetization in the core grind as well as in the peacocking area, for lack of a better term, that's important. Now, I also, while simultaneously designing games that are very much about microtrans, I'm also designing games that are very much not at all about microtrans. I'm making a board game that's been invited to go to a museum that, is costing me a ridiculous amount of money at this point, and I don't even care. And I'm only making one, despite people saying, why don't you make more of these so that you can sell them? I don't want to sell them. I'm not making them for money. So I think the thing is, for me, the challenge is in game design, and if monetization is part of that game design, and that is the metric by which I am measured against my fellow game designers, then it becomes competitive, and it becomes like my own, turn-based game of happiness. But it's certainly affected it. I mean, I think about it all the time, but only after I think about the core loop. Because if the game sucks, if the game is no good, you can sell me whatever for nothing, or try to, and I don't care. So if the gameplay isn't good, it's not going to matter. So the gameplay, and then of course monetization, because we're not making these things for non-profits. Yes.
Do you think a slot machine is a good game?
Do I think a slot machine is a good game? It is a state machine. That's what I think. If I win, it's a fabulous game. But a slot machine. It's a state machine. It has a single win-loss condition. So is it technically a game? Sure. I think I will say it depends on, the answer is yes. Because if your goal is to be profitable, it's fabulous. By that metric. There's many metrics by which we can judge it. So I could argue absolutely and absolutely not, and win both. Aaron.
In the monetization and the core loop, I thought your arcade comment was really interesting because their monetization is split where you're putting in the coin ahead of time, but then you've got to get them to keep putting in the coin.
Exactly.
The core loop is what will keep them there. So what do we take from arcade games to strengthen the core loops in a lot of these games?
I think there's, you know, it's interesting because I was actually playing it. So this barcade experience was not supposed to be quite as revolutionary for me as it was. When I went into this, upstairs on the top floor, they have all these pinball machines, and the very first pinball machine is one that I think is pretty early. I don't know what year. I'm not really an expert on pinball games by any stretch of the imagination. But I watched as I went through them, and here's this pinball machine that's a single level, and now I'm at the next pinball machines, which is bi-level, and now we've got magnets, and now we've got lights, and now people are speaking, and now it's up there. And I was watching these amazing iterations of pinball. And I think in a sense we're going to go through the same thing. But Facebook, we give you the first quarter for free. But people can leave at any point in time. And of course you're not, well, you are, you're monetizing. You're paying a quarter, you know, 50 cents, whatever, to go up that loop. I look, just in general in game design, I look for my inspiration outside of game design. Because there's many things. You know, we can consider World of Warcraft a tremendous success, but you know, 12 or 14 or whatever million players is nothing compared to the audience that Facebook has. And that audience is nothing compared to the audience The Sopranos had. You know, so I still think we have a lot to learn. Yes?
Metrics and fun. What metrics and how do you measure when your players are having fun?
How do I measure when they're having fun? That's a good, that varies so much game to game. I mean, what I tend to look for, interestingly enough, is when they're not having fun. Like, why did everybody leave at level 7? And I try to hit that a lot early. I start games and nuke them, you know, basically wipe the slate clean again and again and again, several times a day, trying to feel that initial lead into the initial ramp into the game and how does that feel to me. So I tend to look more, when are players leaving and why are they leaving? And then I go find that out, because the players who are staying, in fact, they'll mention it many times on the forums. You can see things that they're doing. You can tell the most popular items. So you could actually take a look at this whole range of items and why are they buying that? I also try, especially in social games, to create items that I think players would want to have. Sometimes fun is self-expression, right? I want to be able to go into a game and I want to see things that I could put in my habitat or in my whatever that would allow me to express myself in the world. So if you went to my habitat, you would probably see games, cars, shoes, and Irish history, which would just look ridiculous, but that would obviously be mine. And so you know, if they stick around, I look at you know, I have a ton of different friends on Facebook, as you saw by my earlier slide, and so I go look at the things that they're doing. I watch the forums. I check the popular games. What are people enjoying? Why are they enjoying it? Why do they go back? As a game designer, I mentioned this earlier, I also ask myself, why do I go back? So why right now am I thinking about Garden Life? It's a game I've been playing recently. Why am I thinking about it? Why do I want to go back and do it? Why am I irritated that I have a talent point unspent in WoW? Like, clearly my character's not out going, God damn it, why didn't she give that to me? I've got shit to do today, right? My character's like, my character's not doing anything, right? It doesn't even make any sense that I'm bothered by this. And so these, to me, I am my own best test market for these things when I'm wondering, like, why do I care? And for once, really, being a 43-year-old woman, yes, I am actually my core demographic. Though I have to say that my biggest focus with metrics is where's the drop-off? Why are they dropping off? Or spikes. Why are so many people interested in that particular thing? Asking that question. I ask a lot of people that I grew up with who have always said, why don't you make games that we can play? I ask them to test my games and to look at them. And I ask them what they think is fun and what they think isn't fun. And that's incredibly valuable to me as well. But the metrics usually, it's where, especially in the early days, why are people dropping off? Why aren't they playing? Where are they dropping off? What happened there? And those questions are worth their weight in gold. Their answers are worth their weight in gold. It's my timer alarm. Okay, one more question I can do. Yes?
Do you see in the future any of these casual games on Facebook or Flash portals going back to the traditional market or border card game design?
So I would say that the traditional board or card game design. Well, I think board and card game design is, I think we're on, board and card game design is, you know, that's rising. It's really interesting. The reason I'm struggling to answer that question is because as a gamer, I play board and card games, and I believe games are, well, I believe they're just games. I don't see this wall of video games, real games, non-digital games. They're all games. Like, was anybody here from Boston? Was it or was it not a religious experience when the Red Sox won? Of course it was. Do you think people would have died if they had suggested that baseball was not a game?
They would have set you on fire.
Right, okay, so I tend to see things like baseball and like Carcassonne and like GTA and like Bejeweled Blitz as this huge, and the Olympics, as this huge umbrella under which games exist. And now games are going back. You know, like I said, Apple II is an aberration. We suddenly force people to play games by themselves. So many people raised during the aberration period tend to see games as solo player or, you know, machine-based adventures. But we're now seeing, you know, Carcassonne, Settlers of Catan, many of these games are coming to Facebook. If you've got an iPad and you are a board game player, you went, holy shit, it's arrived. And you knew the second you laid that thing down. And so we're on the verge of this. And many AAA games are going, you know, they are incorporating asynchronous elements, which of course are board game-like, and it's not a coincidence that game designers who worked on board games are actually in demand now. You know, I can assure you that this is also the first time I've ever gone into an interview and said, I'm a hardcore board game player, and they went, that's excellent. Like, normally this isn't like, wow, really? So are you planning to evolve your design skills at all? And so actually this has been really useful, and I think, you know, I don't think it's a question of our games going back, the AAA games going backwards. In fact, they already have, right? There's a Doom board game, there's a Civilization board game that was made on the game that was based on a board game. There's a World of Warcraft board game. So it's already happened. There's a Halo board game. So it's already happened, right? If you're not aware of them, they exist. And I've played most of them, and most of them are like the movies based on games. But eventually, they'll hopefully get better. All right, so now we all need to get out. Thank you again for coming. I appreciate it. Okay. I don't believe I said that one thing. It's going to be so like... And everything we do will last. I know we'll be all right, 'cause we're